Good morning, campers, and welcome to Radio Camp Half-Blood, a Percy Jackson read-along podcast. I'm Bee.
And I'm Zach.
And this week, we started a new Percy Jackson book, The Battle of the Labyrinth, Chapter 1.
Yes, we did. We cracked up a new book, and can you give me a K-I-L-L?
Are you going full into the cheerleading thing now?
Yeah, let's bring it on.
M-U-R-D-E-R. That doesn't really roll off tongue. Anyway, I Battle the Cheerleading Squad, Chapter 1 of I Battle the Labyrinth. It feels weird asking what did you think of this chapter, considering you've already read it. I always feel a little odd asking you that.
So, B, this is the most shocking thing about these books is that 4 and 5 are actually my least read books, because I usually will read 1, 2, and 3.
Right.
Then I'll get to them. I've read the first couple ones a couple of times. Just because that's just what I like to do. But I've read Battle of the Labyrinth and The Last Olympian, the last one, maybe 3 or 4 times. Not as much as the first book or the third book.
So you don't remember them as much?
Well, I do remember them, but I don't remember everything verbatim almost. So for me, it might be a little entirely shocking because I kind of forget some things here and there because things get a little muddy. Same as with the last Deathly Hallows and Half-Blood Prince. I kind of forget those. Even Return of the King, I forget half of that book because you're about, a couple thousand pages into that book and you're just Well,
I think they get a little bit longer too, right? It's hard for me to tell because I'm using ebooks, so I don't really look at the page count.
They are getting slightly longer. That's the one thing about Rick Riordan is that every book just seems to get progressively bigger until it's pretty much a phone book.
I mean, that's pretty common, I think, with YA in general, where the first book is usually the shortest and the last book is the longest-ish. Sometimes it's not a perfect gradient going from shortest book to longest book, but it's it's the same idea as
sometimes how it works, how writers sometimes do things, a prime example is Lord of the Rings. The Lord of the Rings was supposed to be just one book. It was, supposed to be 1,000 pages, but the publishers broke it up into 3 books. Oh, well, that's what happens. But when it comes to YA books, usually a writer would really get into it, and they usually have the discretion to pretty much write as long as you need it to be, depending if it sells or not. Because you can only sell a 200-page book at $8.99, the same price that to a new author you could do an 800-page book. So there's that weird price flex almost. There's a problem with fantasy. They specifically ask you for your word count. You need to keep it to a certain minimum. But when you're published and established, you can just go buck wild.
Yeah, I mean, I also think it's a plot thing too. In general, if you're doing a series, which is more common in YA than say I don't know, contemporary adult fiction or whatever, you're gonna want the later books to be longer because you're dealing with more stuff. You have to wrap up more plot points usually. I don't know. That's not always the case, but I don't know. It's hard for me to tell because it's not I'm holding the physical book. I mean, I read the first book on paperback when we did The Lightning Thief, but that was a million years ago. But it's hard for me to visualize how much longer the books are getting because I'm not looking at them in my hand.
They are getting bigger. I can tell you that for certain because this chapter was really long. I was oh my God, it keeps going. There's parts where I was expecting it. Well, it's not that long, but there's parts where oh my God, it keeps going and going and going. I felt there's always the Rick Riordan a stop almost. If you watch a lot of TV, there's always when an ad break's coming up almost.
Yeah.
But here it was it kept going a little bit, but there's not a problem with that because I really enjoyed this first chapter because it really does go off with a bang.
The thing about this chapter is I don't dislike it necessarily, but it does feel a little bit like we're retreading a lot of the same stuff, which, I mean, I don't think that the book is, not aware of that, because even Percy's here we go again, blow up another school. He kind of, is wary of the whole thing. He keeps going to these schools. Trouble follows him wherever he goes because he's a demigod, so he's kind of he's done this song and dance before. He knows what's going to happen. But it does feel very much like a retread of a lot of the other chapters we've read in previous books of him doing the dodgeball against the Lystragonians, and there's a couple other examples of him and then obviously what happens at the academy that he's in the first book too. He gets kicked out. There's always trouble finding him and he gets kicked out of school. Yeah, duh. This is what happens.
B, this is just my crazy idea, but why doesn't Sally Jackson do this magical thing of online schooling.
I know, right? I didn't necessarily think of her just like being his teacher, but I guess it's kind of obvious that he shouldn't go to school. Like I know that she's just trying to help him have somewhat of a normal life, but at a certain point it's sort of insulting to him because she's like forcing him to live this life as a normal human boy when like clearly he's not. He's a demigod. It's like a different thing. And it's like kind of an unfair expectation to put on Percy to be like, all right, well, you're going to go to the school and it'll be fine. And they have like this weird argument in like the car before he gets out.
Well, he's already being like super pessimistic at this point of just being like, I'm gonna blow up another school again, or like I'm gonna get kicked out. Maybe I'll be kicked out before orientation, which he actually does. That's the funny thing. Like he's actually 100% right.
Yeah, like it's a self fulfilling prophecy. This kind of bothered me a little bit because it's complicated because I know that we've talked about how Sally Jackson is like a great mom, but I think sometimes she's a little bit short-sighted as to like what would be best for Percy as a demigod. Like she's thinking of him as just a normal kid sometimes, and I normally she's kind of good with that. Like she'll, let him go off on his adventures and try not to pry too much and be like she'll be worried, but she understands that he has to do these things. But then when it comes time for him to be back home and not at camp, she's sort of like expecting him to still function as like a normal teenager, and that's just like not a reasonable expectation.
So what I'd like to say about this is that when it comes to Sally Jackson, I think all of our intentions are normally good. But the problem, though, is it's like you have either one or two options. The first option is that he goes to school and pretends to be normal, quote unquote, even though he's a demigod.
Yeah.
Or you have option two, which is they do online schooling, and she pretty much like locks him in the apartment all day, and Percy Jackson would still find ways to blow up the apartment.
Yeah.
Either way, it's kind of hard because you have this weird juxtaposition where, again, you have to look at this from the reader's perspective of most people that are reading this are in middle grade, so school to them is a very the constant of the group here. So you need to have Percy Jackson either going to school or just cut to the first day of going back to camp. But then that doesn't work either because you need to always have like that big bang in the beginning of all these books to really force Percy to go back to Camp Half-Blood. Or, there isn't really much of a story, which kind of may or may not be confusing because I would like a Percy Jackson book to start with. Everything was perfectly normal this year. Then I went to Camp Half-Blood and everything was awesome. Oh no, bad things are happening. But you don't get that in this story. I guess the same thing is like in Harry Potter. The first 4 or 5, actually, yeah, the first 5 books are pretty much normal and stuff, and then you get to Order of the Phoenix, where Harry pretty much is like, oh yeah, I'm getting bullied by my awful cousin, and then the Dementor comes and kind of like stirs that up a little bit, where you don't have to just deal with the Dursleys the entire time.
Right, exactly. He gets, well, yeah, there's a couple times where he like leaves early. We've talked about this before, like how Camp Half-Blood is sort of this reverse Hogwarts, where instead of going to the magical place during the school year and then being home for the summer, he goes to the magical place during the summer, which is much shorter. And then for like most of the year, he's supposed to just like be a human again, which is impossible.
So I actually have a built-in response for this. Chiron at the end of the first book said, Percy, you need to live here with us and train and do all these things. But then Percy opted out of it. So really, Percy's kind of shooting himself in his own foot because it's his fault for not wanting to like stay at camp. Because kids do have the option of just staying there for the entire year. Like look at Clarice and Annabeth for most part of her life.
Yeah, I understand that. But the thing about Camp Half-Blood, though, is it's not a school, right? Like he's asking Percy to kind of put everything on hold and then be at Camp Half-Blood year-round and just sort of be fully a demigod, which, like, isn't necessarily reasonable to expect either because I think both sides are like, either it's like, oh, I'm going to treat you 100% like this, like, mythical being, or I'm going to treat you 100% like you're human, but he's kind of both and neither at the same time. And it would make sense, honestly, it would make a lot of sense if there was, like, a demigod school. Like, why isn't there a place he can go to during the day to like learn things, that understands that he's a demigod, that has some sort of like protections around it, much like say Camp Half-Blood, and he could also like learn how to do math and stuff, because from what I understand, Camp Half-Blood is just teaching him mythology and like battle strategy and how to like take care of horses and stuff like that, which is important for him to know, but he also is still like a teenager who needs to learn like, I don't know, American history and, Earth science and stuff.
So here's the problem with that. I think when it comes to like it sounds great on paper, but then you have to think of like, oh yeah, there's a bunch of demigods from all over the United States like this, so it would either have to be centralized to Camp Half Blood or a different place. Like there isn't just going to be a demigod public school almost where all the kids go there and they're super special, and then during the summer they get like bused to the special
I
camp
guess.
where they eat pancakes and go canoeing. It doesn't really, I guess, work like that. I think maybe there's more to Camp Half Blood than just fighting with swords and stuff. Like, just imagine like Chiron's like, we're gonna read about William Shakespeare today. I knew old Bill back in the day. We used to party hardy.
Yeah, I mean, I could kind of see that. Yeah, I just like, in general, I mean, that's sort of like the criticism I've heard too of like Hogwarts is some people are like, okay, so they're like learning all this like herbology and potions and stuff, but are they also learning like normal school things? Because they're still teenagers who need to know these things.
See, that's different in Harry Potter because the human world and the wizard world are completely different. Because we look at Arthur Weasley and he doesn't understand like the
He doesn't know what a rubber duck
mechanics
is.
of a rubber ducky is.
Yeah.
So like when you have like a wizard job, you're gonna have like a different wizard skill set because you can use magic to fix all your problems other than using a calculator and calculus. Then again, I don't know how you do like wizard taxes, but then again, there's also goblin
Wizard
people
taxes.
that do banks. So I'm like, I don't really know.
You gotta hire a goblin to do your wizard taxes.
So do you have like a goblin accountant and he's just like, you need to pay 6 canuts to the Ministry of Magic. You have to pay your dues. And like I gotta like defeat a dark wizard or something.
Yeah, I mean, we've talked about this. Like, I can't necessarily speak to how much Harry Potter relates because I haven't read the whole thing. But like in general, the idea of like a magical place children go to where they like learn a specific set of skills sometimes falls apart when you think about the logistics of like a kid not being a well-rounded person. And that is maybe the motivation for why Sally Jackson wants Percy to go to a regular school. But like, it's ridiculous for her to expect that the school is not going to blow up. Like, this is what she says to him in like the most passive aggressive way, because not only is this just some random school, it's Mr. Blofus's school, which is like her boyfriend. And so she's all insecure about it. And she hasn't even told the dude that Percy is a demigod. And so they're sitting in the car and she says, just relax. It's only an orientation tour. And remember, dear, this is Paul's school. So try not to, destroy it. Yes. So like, she knows what's going to happen. She understands the risk and she just kind of isn't really helping the matter.
Here's the thing about Sally Jackson is that she's very smart until Rick Riordan decides she's like inept in this way, where it's might have just been like the author's discrepancy with her because she's not a dumb character, but maybe once again you need to have the events go into motion because this is the first book. You need to have something where something either blows up because Rick Riordan has this problem of like when he's writing a book, like something either needs to blow up on the first page or, something needs to happen to really kick off the adventure, which is typical in most adventure stories. Like if we look at, I'm going to use Indiana Jones again. If we look at all the Indiana Jones movies, they all start with like a mini adventure, which kind of kicks off the whole adventure. You have like smaller things like that. Like you need to have something other than Percy Jackson, like sitting down and doing nothing. I think it's just like a weird thing with it. Rick Riordan has to like write about because you need to have that adventure story. Though online school is an option. There's other things that you can do, but
Yeah, he is a phoenix.
oh yeah, and then you have the thing with like even like Paul, Mr. Blowfish is like pulling strings. Like I'm gonna let you into my school, my really expensive school, but nonetheless, it's like the Beverly Hills like private school of New York apparently, which is even funnier.
Yeah, it's just a little frustrating that Sally doesn't even tell him that Percy's a demigod. Like, I understand that it must be pretty awkward to do that, and that the whole problem is that he'll think you're crazy or won't believe you, or I get the whole thing, but if you're gonna date this guy, he's gonna be around. Like,
Okay, so
I don't know.
this is just me being PG-13, but it's like, so my son is actually half god, and he just like, looks at her. Oh God. So I'm pretty much your sloppy seconds. How can I compete with an actual god?
Yeah, that's true. That must be pretty insecurity inducing.
Just talking about like a blow to your ego almost. It's like, I've had better. And like, what do you mean by that? Oh, I've had Poseidon, god of the sea and pretty much, ruler of the world in some extents.
But then again, she also was with Gabe, so it's sort of,
So if Gabe's rock bottom and Poseidon's like up in the sky, does that mean like Paul is like skydiving? He's just like, oh, I'm flying over here. I'm that middle ground. He's more like the frumpy boyfriend almost, where he's just not he's not baffling, but he's not also like complete evil, though he's always in the bad place at the bad time.
Well, yeah, I'm not like holding against Paul either because he's just like an innocent bystander. He doesn't know what's happening. From his perspective, Percy is just like this problem child who just like, well, we'll get into what happens when Percy actually goes into the school, but like I almost think it's like unfair to Percy and to Paul because then he can't even be prepared for what's going to happen because he's thinking, oh, this is just a problem child or whatever. He's not thinking, oh, there's going to be, these monsters that are going to explode a band room.
Yeah, and here's the problem though with that again is like if Sally sat him down and told him without actually showing like Percy doing his powers, Sally would sound crazy. Like it's the equivalent of like, B, I'm a wizard. Do you believe me? Yes or no?
Yeah, I understand that.
It's the exact same type of thing. It's like without showing something. Because once again, we've already established that most mortals can't see through the mist. So there isn't really like a way to actually show Paul. It's actually kind of an interesting like duality of the series where you actually in this chapter you have Paul and then you also have Rachel on the same scale over here. Of you have Rachel who can see all these monsters and Paul can't at all.
Yeah, yeah. We'll talk about him running into her. I was not surprised at all to see her again because we have her full name. It felt really weird if she was just like some sort of rando character that we met at the Hoover Dam.
Oh, you mean the name of a serial killer, Rachel Elizabeth Dare?
Yep. Serial monster killer.
Oh man, like I still can't get over that. Like okay. This is writing 101. We'll get into it right now, but writing 101 is pretty much if you have a character that has three names, that means they're either a main character or at least something special is going to happen with them because you don't give a character three names because that's three times the effort of putting into a person's name other than John Smith or Jane Doe.
No, I wasn't surprised that she showed up actually.
I like all the subtle hints that they give like throughout this chapter, like the girl with the red hair and Percy's got getting
as
nervous.
Soon as they
like,
said that, I knew. For sure.
Yeah, no, it's I like when they did all that stuff. Like they didn't bring it up until like pretty much the very end.
Yeah, as soon as they meet face to face, then it's like, it's you, Rachel Elizabeth Dare, and then she kind of seems like almost offended that he remembers her name.
No, Percy's like, I can't believe I know that name still.
Yeah, and then doesn't she say like, oh, I just caught your first name, but you
Yeah, it's Percy something.
You almost murdered me at the Hoover Dam.
So this book opens up with Percy and his mom. We'll get into this right now. We're about 30 minutes into this. Is that Percy and his mom kind of getting ready for the first day of school orientation at this really fancy school, literally called Good High School.
Good High.
Which is like, yeah, well, good with an E. Goody High School.
Yeah, I imagine it's supposed to be someone's last name.
Oh, I would imagine. It's kind of like I went to John Muir Middle School. Like, there's just like you go to Muir Middle School.
Yeah, my middle school was named after a dude, but I don't know who he is. Like, we never learned anything about him.
But pretty much what ends up happening is Percy sees this weird redheaded girl, and Percy's like heart like falls down to his chest as he's talking to his mom pretty much about like I'm gonna screw up again. Like this whole school's gonna blow up. Look, there it is. It's already blowing up. I'm not even in the school yet. And Sally's trying to be nice to him. So what ends up happening is Percy's like, can you take me to the side entrance? I'd really don't want to see this redhead girl who I don't know yet because to most readers this is supposed to be a surprise.
Is it really? I think
no. Again, we're looking at like middle grade here, where it's like
I guess
it's supposed to be like a surprise to people. Also, you have to keep in mind first time readers.
I don't know if it's supposed to be a surprise so much as like they want you to just piece it together, and then they're like, yeah, it is. It is.
Well,
her.
I think it's more supposed to be like a surprise because you're not suspecting the same person to come back that Percy Jackson met for one chapter.
I guess. Also, we did just read the last book, so maybe if you had a little space between the books, you might be like, oh, right, her. Because you'd forget. Because it's not that important of a scene. It kind of stands out, and she does have a name, but it's not like necessarily at the forefront of your mind when the last book ended.
Yeah, that's one way of looking at it because also we have the fun thing of this is the last day before Percy has to go back to Camp Half-Blood, and also he's got a date with Annabeth.
He sure does. Well, he doesn't want to call it a date, though.
Oh, but it's two people going to see a movie and getting lunch together.
Have you ever, that's definitely happened to me, where like I think I'm going on a date and I'm like, is this a date? And then no one ever clarifies that it's a date. Anyway, I think that's a frustrating thing about being in your 20s. Is when you're like, are we hanging out? What is this? What is happening here?
Can you please tell me as you guys go to Subway? I thought this was supposed to be romantic. Oh, we're just hanging out. Oh.
At Subway.
Well, yeah. I'm going to take you to the fanciest place in town. You're like in the drive through at Taco Bell. So this isn't a date, is it? No.
Yeah. The guy from like Lady and the Tramp comes out. This is the night, the most beautiful night.
I'd be so sad if it was at a Taco Bell behind the Taco Bell with a guy playing like a little box accordion.
What is that guy's life story? The guy who plays the accordion for Two Dogs.
He's just a generally good person, which we're going to probably see when they remake Lady and the Tramp coming next summer, I think. Or the summer after that.
I want the prequel about the accordion guy.
Though I'll never get the person that I want to be that person. Dom DeLuise would have been the perfect person.
Oh yeah, he would have been really good for that.
Now I'm showing my age.
But anyway, they are going on a date. He doesn't want to call it that.
No, and I think that's kind of cute because that's a very kid thing to do. You don't want to call it a date because you don't really know if it's a date or not. Though, pretty much an adult, like you're getting lunch, you're getting to see a movie. That's pretty much a date. Which, though, this is advice to anyone that's like going on a first date. Never go to a movie on a first date because pretty much what you're doing is you're sitting in a room together looking at a movie, and that's it. There isn't really much talking.
I've gone to a movie as a first date, and it ended up going well, but that was because no one else was in the theater, so we just talked the whole time over the movie. It was very Mystery Science Theater. So that's the only time. It wasn't a bad movie. We saw Kubo, but it was just like an empty theater, so I didn't feel bad talking.
Well, my advice is if you're going to go see a movie that's interactive, like going to see The Room or Rocky Horror Picture Show. Though I don't know if you should see that on a first date unless you want to scare the person away. Unless they're really into it.
Yeah, or you might find out that they're the one because they understand
they
you.
do. Especially like when like one of them gets like a fork in the eye and you're like, oh, how did you spend your first day, grandmama, together? Well, we were in the emergency room getting a fork out of my eye.
Wait, do they throw forks or spoons? I thought there was a spoon.
Well, so I've been hit by a fork on the room before, and those things hurt, but it's spoons.
There was a room screening at my college, and I went into the dining hall, and there were like no plastic silverware left, and then I realized it was because people took them to throw at the screen.
Well, no, because I remember the first time that I went, I actually got hit in the face with a fork. I know it's a spoon, but like someone brought like a fork, which to like a theater owner, that's like your worst nightmare because those screens cost about like $50,000. So you put like a fork through a screen. Oh man, that sucks. But yeah, so pretty much first date, never. I pretty much like I guess the ground rules: don't go see a movie unless it's fun. Don't get barbecue.
I wonder what movie they were gonna go see. Percy and Annabeth. Well, they don't end up going on their date. Spoiler alert, because
oh, I know what it is. Do you know what it is? It's Perks of Being a Wallflower.
That's too late for this book, I think.
Or they're seeing Avatar.
What year did that come out? I don't know. I don't know if it matches
I know
up.
exactly I know exactly what they're going to see because this is about 2007, 2008. I might be wrong with my dates, but they're probably seeing the remake of Clash of the Titans.
Hold on. I know. I think that this was written earlier. Hold on. Now I'm gonna look it up.
If you give me the year, I can tell you some movies.
2008.
Okay, so 2008. Let's see. Iron Man. The first one was 2008. They could have gone see nine. No, wait, that would have been the right time because that was a summer release.
Yeah, Iron Man is the first one that comes up when I Google it. The Dark Knight. They could be seeing The Dark Knight.
They saw Iron Man. They saw the beginning of the MCU. That's what they saw. They were gonna go see, or they were gonna go see a re-release of Clash of the Titans, and they would have been like, been there, done that, really bored.
Oh no, wait, they're going to see The Happening.
What? No.
Wow, so many movies came out then. The first Twilight movie came out that year.
Okay, that's what they're gonna go see because Percy Jackson needs to be tortured.
Statistically speaking, that probably would be the movie that they went to go see.
Okay, we are like way off track. We're all talking about movies all day. But pretty much, yeah. So my rules if you're gonna be dating, first date, don't go see a movie. Second rule, don't get barbecue because it's also expensive and really dirty.
Where are you going where barbecue's expensive?
Barbecue's expensive.
I guess I don't get it enough to know whether that's true or not.
Like, yeah, it depends on what they're getting. If you're getting like ribs and stuff, like that'd be like really weird. And then third, maybe a hike. Hikes are good.
Hikes are good. That's good advice. Well, I mean, they can't follow any of this advice because they're yeah. The last first date tip is don't explode a school again for the second time. Because then your date's gonna be canceled, which is what happens with Percy. And then again, Annabeth kind of ends up being a jerk about it too.
We'll
Which
get to there.
like,
We'll get to there. Let's not
well,
go off track some
yeah, I
more.
know. I'm just saying it's like it's not really his fault what happens. Is what I'm saying.
We'll get to there because I do have some thoughts. So pretty much what happens is Percy gets unloaded off to the side of the school, and he meets a bunch of cheerleaders, which pretty much is just like the what is it like the klaxon alarm, boop 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 boop, which pretty much is like oh no.
What am I thinking of that also has evil cheerleaders that turn into monsters? Is it like Jimmy Neutron or something?
Well, Jimmy Neutron, there's one. I'm thinking of the Bob's Burgers episode where June becomes a cheerleader.
Well, I mean like monsters, I mean.
Well, I'm thinking of like for me, like your idea of evil cheerleaders. One thing mine is the cheerleader trilogy, or actually, there's more of them. The cheerleader books by R.L. Stein, like evil cheerleaders. Or I'm thinking of Bring It On.
Well, Bring It On is just humans though. Oh wait, I know what I'm thinking of. The Monsters Inc. cheerleaders, I think.
I never saw Monsters University, so I wouldn't know.
Yeah, Monsters University cheerleaders. They like become scary all of a sudden.
See, this is like what tells how old your author is when like cheerleaders are the threat because you know they're like almost old timey. Like we're gonna have this old timey thing, especially if they have for some reason. Like I've seen this recently in books where you have like the old timey greaser for some weird reason in books. Like, oh, this the author must be showing his age a little bit.
Who wears like a leather jacket anymore?
So pretty much what ends up happening is that like these cheerleaders corner Percy and they're like, "Oh, hey, you're Percy Jackson. We've been expecting you." And like something's like is off.
Which, oh geez, these freaking people are monsters, I guess.
Well, you don't know that, or they're just really, really excited. Though there's the type of things where like for some reason I'm thinking they're like '50s cheerleaders. Like they have like the weird like beehive like bop it type of haircut. Like they're like really out of time. Because one of them looks like Medusa almost, like with her hair. It just goes everywhere.
It kind of frustrated me that it was so obvious that they were going to be evil like right off the bat. I'm like, "Oh my god, I know this is going to happen, the inevitability of it all." And I guess it's like one of those things that happens sometimes, especially in like book series where there's sort of like a pattern of plot where you come to expect certain plot points, and I don't even know if I should be annoyed by that because there is like an acknowledgement of how frustrating that is. Like, oh, Percy is frustrated that this keeps happening. He knows that he's going to go into school and there's going to be some sort of monster lurking in the hallways and he's going to accidentally blow up the school and they're going to blame it on him because they can't see through the mist. Like, those are all like sort of foregone conclusions. And he's just as tired of the scenario as kind of we are as readers. But that's kind of, it doesn't change the fact that it's a little bit annoying to read still. Like, I'm like, oh, here we go again. Here they are. Here's the monsters. We get it.
It's tropey. That's pretty much what it is. It's just a trope at this point or a cliche. But pretty much Percy Jackson goes through the motions, though. It would have been funny if he like just called it out like right off the bat. And it would have been even better if they weren't actually monsters. I think that would have been a better twist.
Right. I think exactly like a bait and switch. I feel like that would have been more interesting. And like maybe Percy messes up because he's so nervous that there's going to be monsters. Like I think that would have been maybe an interesting choice.
So for me, it would have been more interesting. This is just me. Let me sit back down in my armchair when I'm writing. Is that you have like they look so obvious as like the monsters
And
because they're
something
like
else is the monster,
yeah,
maybe?
it's like the weird like
Yeah.
schlubby guy or like he's like the janitor or someone where it's almost like a false thing. Like or the joke is that it would have been even better if it's like the cheerleaders are monsters, but they're like just like the mean girls. Like that's like the falsely like they're just terrible people.
Right, like he's like assuming that they're not good because they come across as mean. Like, yeah, it's almost like so obvious. Like, oh, of course the cheerleaders would be evil because they're already like catty or whatever, have the stereotype of being like the popular kids. So I did find that a little bit like not that compelling as a story choice.
Yeah, I see where that comes off as stupid because once again we also have the old trope of like they kind of like almost surround Percy and Mr. Blowfish kind of like I was like, oh hey Percy, I didn't see you, and they like back off.
The one clever addition to this is that In any other scenario, Percy'd be like, nah, I'm out of here. And he would have left much sooner. But because of like the weird social pressure of Mr. Blowfist being there and him not wanting to like disappoint his mom, that's why he doesn't leave. So I guess there's at least that sort of narrative justification. But I wasn't in general thrilled with like going over this same stuff that we've been through before. I guess the only other interesting addition is that instead of him going through it alone, he also gets to meet up with Rachel Elizabeth Dare again.
He gets a partner, a badge, and a gun.
Yeah, and it's interesting because it's not another demigod for once. It's like a human who just sees monsters.
Which I like, and we'll get to it right now because pretty much what ends up happening is Percy goes to the assembly, and surprise, surprise, guess who sits right next to him? Rachel Elizabeth Dare.
Yeah, she kind of zeroes in on him because I don't exactly know why he's running from her exactly. I guess he's like nervous that she's going to cause something to happen or she's going to like sort of blow up his spot as a demigod and be like, oh, I know who you are or whatever. But she doesn't actually know who he is because she just knows that monsters and stuff happen around him and that he's like her in the sense that he can see those things. But she doesn't have the full picture, and that's kind of why she's hounding him in a way, is because she kind of wants to know more.
She reminds me of like, this is not maybe not the nicest thing to say, but she reminds me of like that horse girl almost. Like I think I've
Oh,
mentioned
yeah.
that she's like the horse girl that's like, did everyone turn in the homework and everyone's like, be quiet. But she seems
Wait till
really.
she meets Chiron.
Oh, see that? Oh my
Wait,
god.
does she have a dad? Is this the beginning of Horsing Around? Did we find the origin story?
No, like the way I know, like she wears like a Harvard like art department shirt, but I think it would have been even better if like she still was like the horse girl, middle school girl. Like she just has like that annoyance to her, which is just she's very like not like strict, but like she's like she takes everything like literally rather than it being figuratively.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like in general, also, she feels like she's going crazy because she's been seeing all this stuff, but she's been hiding it from everyone around her because she thinks that no one will believe her. And then finally, Percy's like the only person who really understands what she's talking about and is like confirming all of these suspicions she's had, like where he feels like he's nuts, like saying, oh, all the, ancient Greek myths. And then instead of being met with like confusion or disbelief, she goes, oh my god, exactly, yes, that's what I've suspected this whole time. And then he's kind of like freaked out by that. He's like, oh, I was hoping that you would also find that weird because that's what everybody reacts with. So it's odd to meet a mortal who isn't that way.
I really do enjoy Rachel just because I hate to say it, she actually is one of my favorite characters. I like how once again she's like very matter of factly, like she figures out everything very quickly, but yet she isn't like a bumbling idiot at the same time. Like there's a lot of books like where you have like the mortal or someone that figures it out and then they become the like comic relief, which is like, whoa, like all this weird stuff's happening. Don't mess with Percy Jackson.
Right, yeah, like I actually like that a lot about her is that even though she's new to all of this, she's pieced together a lot of stuff. Like, oh, instead of being like surprised when Percy says that, it's more like her suspicions are confirmed. Like, oh, yes, of course, I've kind of figured this out. I felt insane and no one else saw what I was seeing, but now everything makes sense to me and I've been paying attention, sort of.
It also goes really good in this situation because we have Percy doesn't see that they're like the cheerleaders, even though he knows they're evil. He doesn't understand like the capacity of evilness. And Rachel's like, "Take my hand," and they like go behind the bleachers and they go to the music room because Rachel can completely see what they look like and Percy does not know. Because once again, we have this weird thing where she's, I guess, can see she has the sight better than Percy.
Yeah, that's kind of interesting that I was a little bit confused about the mechanics of that. So like Percy actually can't see monsters all the time because we've established that when it came to Tyson, right? Like even he didn't see through the mist when it came to Tyson being a cyclops.
Well, even like demigods can be confused by the mist. I think we actually got like an email about it a couple weeks ago.
Because right, yeah, someone explained that to me. I think it's because he's half mortal. I don't exactly know how it works.
But then we have the thing. It's like, but she's full mortal. But again, maybe it's like because it's like the sixth sense, like it just sharpened because she doesn't have like ADHD and dyslexia.
Yeah, I see Greek
Oh no, I
people.
see spooky people. But I like that she isn't bumbling. I like that she's the one that comes up with the plan and they go to the band room and Percy kind of starts filling her in because she's not going to let him leave until she gets answers, which is a good, reliable character because you need characters like that where they're not stupid and go with the flow. Like they actually ask questions and they actually get solid answers without being interrupted. Wow.
Yeah, that actually happens for once in this whole
Oh my
friggin' book series. That
God.
she asks him. I mean, he actually doesn't say that he's a demigod because he says I'm half blood. I'm half mortal, and then she goes half what, and then they get interrupted. So again, he can't avoid it, Rick. He just has to, something important has to be interrupted. It's inevitable. He's gotta. It's the law. I don't know.
My favorite thing about this, though, which is the joke that made me laugh for 1,000 yards, was that Percy just assumed that she just lives right next to the Hoover Dam, even
Yeah, that
though
was
the
pretty
national.
funny,
And
actually.
he's like, wait a second, this makes no sense. I thought you lived in the Hoover Dam.
Yeah, what does she live in the Hoover Dam?
This is my home now. I live right next to Beans the hobo and my pet raccoon, Coon.
I liked how kind of much of a wise guy she was toward him. Like, oh, so you just thought I lived at the Hoover Dam? Like, why would you assume that? And then he's sort of like, yeah, wait, I'm dumb. Of course you don't live in the Hoover Dam.
Everything about Rachel that I love, especially she's got 3 names. She may or may not still be a serial killer.
We don't know.
No.
A lot of serial killers are highly intelligent.
Wait, they're very charismatic.
I'm imagining like a Making a Murderer-esque sort of documentary about Rachel Elizabeth.
Oh no, VM, just imagine she has like the Jeffrey Dahmer like glasses.
Oh, this is creeping me out. All right, we have to move on from Rachel. I actually like her as a character because she does feel like not conveniently stupid for the plot. Like she actually does ask questions, which is kind of nice. And in this case, actually, Percy's kind of somewhat with it when it comes to the situation, because even he, instead of just like going like, oh yeah, I'm gonna go into this school, like he's also aware like, oh, I'm probably gonna run into monsters, whatever. But he's, even compared to him though, she's less confused because at least she's like, okay, I see what's actually happening. Well, he's just sort of like, oh, maybe I'm just nervous or maybe I'm seeing things, but he's like noticing all these weird out of character things, or like he bumps into the cheerleader and it makes like a hollow metallic sound and he's like, well, that's weird, but anyway, I don't exactly know what that means. Like, you're a demigod, it's clearly a monster. Like, get out of there.
Now this opens up a new can of worms because we have the problem now of she's once again now taking the surrogate place of Annabeth. She's redhead Annabeth. We've had goth Annabeth before with Thalia.
Yeah,
and now
emo
we have,
Annabeth.
Yeah, we have emo Annabeth, I guess. Yeah, I guess punk rock Annabeth. But now we have redhead Annabeth. And what ends up happening is, of course, the cheerleaders come in and they start turning into like spooky monsters, which I can't even pronounce, so I'm not even going to try. But they
Oh
turn into
yeah,
spooky.
how do you say what they are? They're like sort of like vampires, but they're also part animal.
And part bronze. Well, one of them has like
Yeah, there's a lot going on. I kind of had a hard time envisioning what they look like. Empusa, I want to say.
that just sounds like I don't even know what that sounds.
It sounds like a papusa. Like you go to a restaurant and you get it with the spicy slaw.
Like a papoose. Isn't that like the thing that you put babies in?
Yes, a papoose is what carries babies.
So one of them turns into a papoose.
An empusa sounds like a combination of a papusa and an empanada, which sounds delicious.
Maybe it is. Maybe that's like their final form where they start turning into food items.
I like how the first thing that I see on Google when I search empusa is in fact an illustration of the Percy Jackson characters.
But it's interesting because so we have these creatures which they're like, I guess, children of Hecate, which is the goddess of magic, which we've already dealt with before with Circe.
We have, yeah.
So, we have like this weird thing. It's like, oh yeah, Hades, I guess, is evil, quotation marks and 1,000 quotation marks there. But then we have Hecate, who literally just bursts evil people and magical evil people. Like, well, maybe there might be some weird thing about this. Though, I like that Rick Riordan is kind of like now going into like the weirder aspects of mythology. Like, he isn't going to like the standard things like, oh, Minotaur and Medusa. That's for the first book. Now we can get into like the really weird nitty gritty things, which I like. So pretty much what ends up happening is Percy's just like freaking out and trying to do, Percy Jackson things. Okay, this is like my favorite part. This is just me visualizing everything, but Percy Jackson kills the first one. It turns into dust and like just covers Rachel. I think that's
She's
the
like,
funniest thing because she like coughs it out. And I was thinking about like, it's like if you or your loved one suffer from mesothelioma or whatever it's called.
Mesothelioma?
Yeah. Like, oh. Like, maybe that might be a health hazard.
Call Mackie Butts and Wise.
I love how just matter-of-factly she's just like, oh, they turned to dust. And she's like covered in the stuff.
Yeah, in general, once again, I've talked about this a million times. The fight scene is whatever. I feel like if I was visually seeing it, it would be a little bit more interesting. I don't always really find much enjoyment out of like the nitty gritty written sort of battle scenes of like, and then the knocked over this instrument and stuff.
See, this would have been a cool time for Rachel to kill the monster. Like Percy like loses his sword and she's the one like slices him in half.
That'd be pretty cool, honestly. Though that I don't know, that would be a little bit much because there's no reason for her to know how to use a sword.
Well, she doesn't mean to do it. She thinks that, because you just have to like tap them and they explode. Like it would just been like Percy Jackson's like being held up by the neck by this creature, and she just like rams her sword into him. Like, oh, I wasn't expecting that to happen. But that's just my weird things when it comes to fight scenes. It was okay. So pretty much like sums up what happens is that one of them is like, I'm the senior one. You've killed all my trainees.
There's only two of them, right? So there's like the younger one, and then who's like kind of rooting her on, and then like the older Empusa, which I still think that sounds like a food, is standing in the doorway, kind of like rooting her on, blocking them from leaving. And then they kill the first one pretty easily, and then the other one's puts up more of a fight. In general, though, I found like the actual fight scene like not that interesting. The only thing is that there's a lot of description of like destruction. So like, oh, they knocked over this instrument, they knocked over this bunch of music stands, whatever. And I think that kind of drives home how much like destruction they're doing, because then you know that like people are going to walk by and be like, what's happening? So I think that kind of serves to like make you anxious in that way of like, oh God, then when they see what's happened, Percy's going to get blamed for it, and it's going to be a whole thing, and you just know what's happening. It's building up to that moment, and it's very frustrating because it's like inevitable, and there's kind of nothing you can do about it.
Well, you're expecting it to happen.
You're just like empathetically being frustrated at the situation, because I think it's meant to like sort of, you're happy that they're fighting and that they're hopefully going to succeed against these monsters, but then also even when he does succeed in killing the second monster,
she explodes into like fire.
She explodes in flames, which is new. That's a new thing.
Well, we don't know if she's dead or not. She could have just been an escape artist because she did blow up in the flames.
Or she disappeared in flames, maybe, yeah.
Very Wicked Witch of the West.
Oh, but she also does like a little speech too before she dies. It's like a whole thing about how they're all going to be like slaves to the time god, and that like none of his friends are going to survive. And it's like a really dark, horrible kind of speech she gives, and then she dies.
Well, Percy Jackson just got her monologuing.
Yeah, he really got her monologuing a lot.
And what ends up happening is, surprise, surprise, Paul Blowfish comes in with a group of students, and all of a sudden he just sees fire, flames, and broken instruments.
I like how he says, "What have you done?" It's just like, I'm imagining it from his perspective, because he's just like, saw a kid commit arson and is like, what have you done? And that's kind of hilarious to me, how terrible that is. Like, if you saw like a child just like setting fire to a building, like, I can't even imagine the level of chaos that would ensue, like, after that happened.
Not only that, but just imagine like the dinner conversation that Paul and Sally are gonna have. So what'd you do today? Oh yeah, your son burnt my school almost to the ground.
He set the school on fire, and he like attacked a girl. And like, okay, what is he seeing through the mist? Did he see her murdered in plain sight? Like, if she exploded or whatever, whether she disappeared in a burst of flames or if she actually died, what did Mr. Blowfish see and the other people in the hallway? Like, did they see Percy like throw a Molotov cocktail like at a like teenage cheerleader and have her die right there? Like, I'm just going through my head of like what their version of events was.
This must have been really awkward, and you know what? I'll see all those kids in therapy.
I'll see all of you in therapy.
Yeah, so pretty much it's the old spiel of Percy Jackson and Rachel Elizabeth Dare, GTFO. And they get the frick out of there.
I thought you were doing an initialism of Rachel Elizabeth Dare, and I was like, wait, that's not how you spell your name.
Oh, PJ and
yeah,
RED.
Yeah, Rachel.
So
yeah.
Oh my God, I'm an idiot.
Oh wait, her hair's red. Oh my God.
I'm an idiot. That's why I just wanted. I'm an idiot. Like, wait a second.
Wait, is that intentional? We're dumb.
Well, it's okay. It's either that or they call her Scarlet Elizabeth Dare.
My mom's middle name is Elizabeth.
Oh my God.
I just remembered.
I can't believe it's red. Oh my God.
I never even thought of that.
Well, I don't think we've ever decided to put like.
All right, can we just call her Red from now on? Because that's so much easier to say.
I'm sure all the shippers are like Red and PJ.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
Redabeth. That's another one. Oh God.
No, don't give them ideas. Stop it.
So what ends up happening is, again, they do a 32 skidoo and they get out of there. Conveniently, Percy Jackson bumps into the one person he wishes that he didn't meet right now. And that is Annabeth Chase.
There she is. And this is kind of a weird interaction, honestly.
Well, this is the old-timey thing of having we have a date today, but who is this girl? But wait a second, we have a date today.
This is so stupid, honestly. I found this really frustrating because, like, what? Okay, so, like, he can't spend any time with any girls ever. They just met. He says this is a friend, sort of. They hardly know each other. He explains the whole situation, and she's still, like, kind of mean about it, and then is like, oh, well, it's kind of passive aggressive about everything that happened at the school when clearly he just was, like, attacked by monsters, and this girl helped save his life. I don't know. The whole thing seemed annoying and a little bit above Annabeth as far as her behavior. Like, I thought she'd maybe take it a little less petty than this, because it's not like he did anything that was really super offensive.
Well, okay, I can see, like, in my head, like, obviously the visual way they would shoot the scene would be they run out and Percy's actually holding her hand and stuff. Like, okay, you can have, like, the weird misunderstanding that way.
I would hold hands with a stranger if there was an explosion and I was like, all right, let's get out of here. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, I just think that that's kind of like a very petty reaction.
No, I understand that. So I'm looking at, so the way they normally, like, shoot these scenes, this is a very typical thing. You either have it, A, they're holding hands, B, like, it's like they have to jump from the second floor and it felt like she falls on the person. And
looks they land on top of each other, whatever, so it looks like they're closer than they are or whatever. Yeah, I could see that. Maybe, but that's not how it's written, though. And I don't. So for Annabeth to take it to that level,
well, that's how it's supposed to be, like, implied in, like, Annabeth. Or you have the third option B, which is that Percy Jackson saves Rachel and they walk out the school and she kisses him as, like, a thank you, and then that's when Annabeth comes in. Like, there's ways of doing that.
Any of those options would have made this scene a little bit less silly. But for this, it's like I don't think Annabeth is all that childish or like petty. So she normally, she's logical. She's good at thinking things through. So for her to like briefly see him adjacent to a girl and then he explains who she is to him and it's not that big of a deal. For her to like, I guess she's annoyed too that they can't go on their date, but it's like, oh, you can't go on our date because there was an explosion because it wasn't your fault. Like, she understands that he's a demigod. She understands all the circumstances of what happened. So, like, for her to still be judgmental, I thought was, like, kind of ridiculous. And, like, not even necessarily in character. Like, even for, like, a teenager who was looking forward to a date or whatever. Like, I don't know. It just seemed a little bit much.
It always has to deal with, like, how you, like, characterize a character and how, throughout most of the series, she's very calm and collect. And I think this is the part where Rick Riordan's like, well, we need to amp up the kid romance a little bit here. So we need to make her jealous, which isn't really her character.
And then Annabeth goes, she's kind of cute, like, kind of like trying to be like petty about it or something like, and then he's like, oh, I never noticed. Oh no, now your ship name makes sense all of a sudden. But anyway, I don't know. It seemed like very odd for her to say that. Like, what? Like, there's no reason for you to think that they've dated. Like, what? She saw him once at the Hoover Dam and once again when there's, like, an explosion? Like,
here's the thing, though, when it comes to this, is that this is a problem with authors, is, like, they'll write a new book. It's not like they forget, like, their character traits and, like, pretty much the character arc, but pretty much what ends up happening is that they want to, like, adjust it, but they adjust it to, like, it's like, I think of it like sliders, like, they adjust it way too far. Or you have the thing where he just wants to have like this weird dramatic tension, which is kind of stupid on the part of just have the thing play out and nothing really happens, but then obviously later on something might happen. Or it's I get the whole point of this I'm trying to get at here is that it's like, oh, we're trying to see that Annabeth and Percy's relationship is kind of strained, but why? It's not really. They've gone through 3 years of them almost nearly dying. Like you'd think that she'd give Percy like the benefit of the doubt. I mean, Percy does kind of hang out with other girls. Just imagine how jealous she probably got with all the Hunters of Artemis last book, or with Clarice. It's like, what? No, this is stupid. Like, I don't even know what the statistic is, but I think there's more girls in Camp Half-Blood than there are boys.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if maybe Rick Riordan's supposed to be like, well, sometimes teenage girls are like a little bit ridiculous when it comes to romance, and they're not like thinking the way they normally think, and so she's acting petty, like not within her normal personality because of the way Percy's making her feel or something.
Here's the problem, though. Isn't there like a part in this where he even says Rachel's cute?
Where he says that? Oh, there is a part where he says, oh, it's not like I've been thinking about her a lot or anything. There was that part. But I think that that's also just typical weird teenage boy deflection too, of being like, well, isn't it girls are like whatever, and it's like I'm not even going on this date, and like I definitely have been thinking about this girl that I met one time, like which is I don't know, it's like a weird like weird in between from like when a guy is like a normal human being who goes on dates and when he's like, ooh, they have cooties. It's like you have to like pass the precipice of like admitting that they don't have cooties.
We totally weren't like hugging for more than 5 seconds. If we hug for 10, that means we're dating.
Yeah, it's sort of like this weird. I mean, what, he's like a freshman in high school, so how old is he then? He's 15? 14?
He'd be about 15 because the last book, he'll be 16.
He'll be 16. Right, yeah, you're right. He is 15.
Which seems like a little old to be
Acting this way. Yeah, now that I'm thinking about it, I feel like 15 everyone in general in this scenario should be acting more mature except for Red, who's just like, she's just acting like a normal person, actually. Yep.
For some reason, she's a pirate
she's
now
Redbeard.
because there's a pirate named Red. Well, no, Redbeard. Oh, I guess you're right. Well, there's Redbeard, Bluebeard, Blackbeard. Oh my god, is this like the Infinity Gauntlet once we collect all the pirate
You
beard?
collect all the beards. You become the ultimate pirate.
The Infinity Hook? No, because there's a pirate in Pirates of the Caribbean now called Red.
I feel like now we're just connecting a sort of conspiracy board of nothing, but
Well, no, there's nothing about
There's
this.
nothing
I just
about-
think
that's
it's funny. No, but what I like about this is that at least they have the common sense of Percy Jackson tells her all the bad things that are happening and the weird message, and like we got to get to Camp Half-Blood quick. And then I'm just imagining like the Flintstone run where like they start running and all of a sudden like the background changes.
the background just scrolls around.
Yeah, it scrolls around pretty much. They leave Red in the dust, which is kind of sad.
Yeah, I don't know. This ending struck me as kind of a weird Annabeth interaction, and I don't know if it's supposed to be because she's like being like an irrational teenager and like love makes you do weird things or something, or I don't, or if it's just like not the best example of writing.
Well, it could be a mixture of column A, B, C, D, E, F, G.
Like maybe that is what Rick was getting at, but it just was like so far off from what I'm come to expect from this character that it just felt a little weird. Like, oh, we're just trying to make conflict where there is none. There's no reason. Like all he had to do was like make more of a reason for Annabeth to be upset or make Annabeth less upset at this normal thing that definitely doesn't seem that suspicious. But like to find this specific middle ground where like it's simultaneously like not a lot happened and also Annabeth is reacting way too much about it. It's like I don't understand why this is happening.
I think it's a mixture of you need to have the weird thing. Because remember, second book, Annabeth is like weirdly racist. Third book, she's like really passive aggressive.
Yeah, I forgot about that. Remember when she was Cyclops racist?
Yeah, it's like you have like this thing where I guess Annabeth has to go on an arc, even though she's gone on an arc like 4 times at this point.
Yeah, it's like I thought she's supposed to be pretty like wise and have good judgment, and then every once in a while her judgment just seems completely from left field, like she's just like very petty and jealous. And you're like, I don't know if I understand why you're being this way. I don't know, it's really strange. I guess it's also like the disappointment thing too of her not going on her date, but like I don't know.
So B, if you think about it, this is the weird thing that I've just noticed. First book, she's just kind of like, I'm right and everything's smart, and I hate my mom and dad. Second book, I'm Cyclops racist, but at the end, I'm not. Third book, I kind of hate my parents again, and like I hate things, and I want to join the Hunters of Artemis at the end. Nah, I'm not. Here, I'm kind of petty, and like I don't like Rachel Elizabeth Dare because she sounds like a serial killer, Percy.
And because she's a girl standing within 5 feet of this guy who's not even my boyfriend because he refused to call this a date. So
I kind of hate to use the word, but she's like, she jumps to conclusions faster than like most politicians.
yeah, no, she's very wishy-washy sometimes. So I get maybe that has been an established character trait. It's just like we've been told so much how smart she is. So like whenever she acts a little bit irrational, I'm like, this doesn't seem to mesh with that idea of her. But I don't know.
All we know is she jumps to conclusions.
Yeah, just like they jumped out of the exploding school away from chaos.
Well, even actually think about it. In the second book, she's the one that rescues Percy from the first exploding school.
That's true, she is.
She just knows when Percy goes to school, like she goes and like watches him just to make sure the school doesn't blows up.
That's how he meets all of his girlfriends. He explodes schools.
Yeah, that's actually one of like the hidden powers of Athena. She knows when the school's gonna be blown up. Like, oh no, my exploding school senses are tingling.
Anyway, I don't know. I've rambled enough about about Annabeth. It's not to say that I like don't like Annabeth as a character. It's more like I do like Annabeth as a character. So when sometimes she does like weird things like this, I'm like, this is just like manufactured drama a little bit.
Yeah, see, that's where like you kind of have to like step back and look at this more critically because if you look at this as like what it is, I can see where it like makes sense to like again middle grade. This is like they're at this point in time where like they're kind of having these feelings and stuff. So it's almost like soapy, like soap opera like drama almost. But like soap operas, at least this could sound really weird. They're more like grounded almost, and like how they deal with that stuff.
Well, because they're more about emotions, they're not also about demigods and stuff happening at the same time. Yeah, I'm interested to see what they do with the Rachel Elizabeth Dare character because if they're going to be like if there's going to be like a whole annoying arc about Annabeth being jealous, I'm going to like not be thrilled because this seems really silly and doesn't really track with anything and they're like it's not even like Percy's acting super like he's crushing on her except for that one weird internal monologue thing that we hear in this chapter where he's like, "Oh, I haven't been thinking about her." But other than that,
See, this is what I'm thinking about, and I might be wrong or I might be right because I can't remember this right now, or I'm totally like leading you on for all I know. Is that I feel like there might be like the weird character arc where you have like, it's the love triangle like in most animes where you have the two girls, you got the smart one that's the redhead, and then you have the other smart one which is the blonde. Percy Jackson, you get to pick.
yeah, I don't know. In general, I'm not. Do you think that maybe Rick Riordan was also responding to like the cultural zeitgeist at the time? Like I'm thinking like, oh, the Empusas are like kind of vampire-ish, and then they even say, oh, that's based on us. And then this is the year that the first Twilight movie comes out, and also that has like a lot of like love triangle stuff in it. Same with like Hunger Games. So like was he just like riding on the tails of the whole love triangle like jealousy thing that happens a lot in books or I don't exactly know.
Before we can actually talk about this, we have to like look at books written at this time where in Harry Potter they had the weird love triangle at first. Like when you get to teenagers, that's like one of the like the draws of a lot of teen fiction. Like I know this happens a lot in Christopher Pike books. I know this happens a lot in like R.L. Stein Fear Street books and like Sweet Valley High. I don't know why I'm using like, these old ones, but like pretty much when you get to like YA and stuff, like once you get to be teenagers and you're starting to deal with romance, you kind of have like authors like fall into the idea of having like love triangles or having things where a character gets jealous at another person just because it's like manufactured drama for the sake of drama. Though I don't think Rick Riordan like falls into trends like this because if he was gonna do stuff like that, like this would have happened
He
last
would lean
book.
into it more.
No, he would have leaned
Probably.
into it more. We're only in the first chapter, so we
Yeah.
don't know if he's leaning into it or not.
I hope not. I'm like, if we see this character again, I really hope it's not more of like Annabeth being weird and being like, oh, she's cute, right? You think she's cute? Like, oh, stop it. That's like so weird and petty. Stop it. You're better than this, Annabeth.
Well, there's either like two ways. Is like she's gonna be put onto the sidelines, or the way they've already established her is that she's gonna be the one going on this next quest with them, which would be kind of cool because a mortal going on a mythical quest like this is very hero's journey.
Oh yeah, I hope we see more of her. I just hope that the dynamic between them is like not this whole spiel for the rest of the book.
If we've learned anything from Annabeth is that she's like weird at the beginning of the book, and by the end she's completely fine and like rational again, which is
Every book she learns to be rational, and then the beginning of every next book, then she's irrational again.
please be tell me if I'm not right or wrong about that, right? Where like she's like almost like a
No, that's so true. Like it's weird. It's just like it's the reset. Like she needs to constantly be around Percy to like ground her or something. I don't know. Maybe that has to do with her fatal flaw of like the hubris thing of like always thinking she's right and like that might be why she jumps to conclusions or is kind of like huffy when it comes to like misunderstandings. I don't know.
It could also be from like the ADHD, but that might not be.
Oh, maybe she's like not focused on what's happening.
Yeah, that might be one of the things, or she just jumps to conclusions, or she's just. I don't like to use the word crazy, but like she has like that weird like crazy ex-girlfriend vibe.
Which is weird because they're not even really officially dating. Like Percy isn't even calling it dating. So that's a lot. That's a lot to jump to already. And she still has a weird thing with Luke. So if anything, Percy should be jealous. Anyway, don't get me started. I'll start yelling about how Luke is gross.
We'll end up talking about this, and like we'll get like, or just all the people are just like, I didn't know you guys felt this way about Annabeth. Like, well, we're just talking about her. We're not. I still like Annabeth as a character.
No, yeah, I still think she's a great character. So that's why it frustrates me when she acts that way. It's because I like her as a character. So I'm like, oh, I feel like she's better than this specific plot point. I don't know. We'll see. We'll see where this goes.
So, B, what is the name of the next chapter before we jump to any conclusions?
The name of the next chapter is The Underworld Sends Me a Prank Call. Oh, geez. Okay. Underworld. I'm gonna assume that that's gonna be Nico, right? Like we found out that he was the son of Hades. Remember when all that stuff happened in the last book? So we found out he's the son of Hades.
I'm just like imagining Percy Jackson like gets like a phone call and just Nico, hey Percy, is your refrigerator running? Actually no, I don't have a refrigerator. Well, you better go catch it. I have like a bunch of stories about prank calls, which I'll talk about next episode.
I mean, I think they're probably gonna get some sort of contact with Nico. We're gonna maybe follow up on some of the things we left off in the first, or not. Sorry, not in the first book, in the last book. So, yeah, we found out that both he and his sister, who may or may not be dead. I mean, she definitely is dead because she's in the underworld. But like, as far as her continuing to be a character and coming back, that's like still in question. Because like, I don't know. His dad is Hades. Anything is possible when it comes to death, I think, in that scenario. Still need to. I mean, Luke is alive, as we found out.
He may not still be a vegetable.
Yeah, we don't exactly know how things are going with our broken garbage boy. Yeah, I mean, I feel like I don't understand how he's still alive, but I guess we'll maybe. I don't obviously think that all of this is gonna be completely resolved within the second chapter of the next book, but like I'm sure some of this is going to come up because they're going back to camp. They're obviously going to mention the explosion thing that happened at the school, and that the monsters said some spooky stuff about the Lord of Time. So like Kronos, obviously, is Kronos finally done reforming in that sarcophagus? I mean, he's been taking a while now. Maybe he's he's finally, I don't know, able to move around and not just be carried by the already broken Luke.
Someone has to carry Luke so Luke can carry Kronos.
Yeah, it can carry the sarcophagus filled with Kronos. It's like a whole process.
Oh, no, I figured it out. So, you see, Luke has like a little papoose, and he puts Kronos's like little coffin there.
Kronos is But like what I'm imagining is like one of those like hand truck things. And it's like the sarcophagus is on it, and then like Luke can't lift it because he's too weak. So like he's just like on a, I don't know, a Segway, and it's pushing that.
Do you honestly want to know what I think what Luke looks like in this book? And this is where everyone can like look up Christopher Pike, original Star Trek wheelchair.
That's not too far from what I'm imagining, actually. He even has the blonde hair.
Oh yeah, yes he does. Oh, Christopher Pike.
Yeah, that's kind of messed up how close that is.
I finally pull a Star Trek reference out of my butt, and I'm happy because no one would ever get any of my jokes.
Well, I had to Google it, but it is pretty spot on. Anyway, so the broken Luke we have to deal with, and his Time Lord friend. No, not Time Lord. That's a different thing.
It's some wibbly wobbly timey wimey type of stuff.
A Time Lord is very distinct from a Lord of Time. Confusing, I know.
Well, see, there's Time Lords and Lord of Time. They always get confused when they go to like their time travel meetings.
Mm-hmm. Yes, so a very important distinction. But yeah, I don't know if he's back already, or I don't know, because I keep forgetting the Empusas said something about something, but maybe they were just kind of egging him on.
But we'll find out next time. Next chapter, which will be coming out next week after this. So we'll figure it out.
The same mythical time.
So, B, you ready to read some emails?
Okay, yeah. So we got 2 emails from a listener who said, "Hi, Zach and B. I'm Joseph. I live in Wisconsin, and I'm 11. Percy Jackson is my life. I love it so much. And your podcast I listen to fall asleep when I'm cleaning, and I have read all the series of Unfortunate Events books and all the Harry Potter books and the Percy Jackson books. One more thing. Sorry it's so long. What's your favorite character?" Fan Joseph. This is, believe me, not the longest email we've gotten, so thank you for your consideration, but it's fine.
So, B, who is your favorite character?
Favorite character. I feel like we've answered this in varying ways before. So why don't we do just like lightning round? Go. What's your favorite character?
Rachel Elizabeth Dare, because I just found out that her name's Red in initials.
Favorite characters? Talia, maybe. I think I'm gonna stick with Talia for now. All right, that might change.
So we got an email from Maddie. Hey, Zach and B, I'm Maddie, and I'm 13, and I live in the U.S. of A. Hoorah! And I've been listening to your podcast since you started the Sea of Monsters. I wanted to share a little fact about the god Pan, since you discussed him in the last chapter. So, in Greek mythology, Pan is canonically dead, as he's mentioned in the book before. The legend goes that someone heard a sailor call out, Thamos, the great god Pan is dead. But the funny thing is that there's been a misunderstanding. You see, the Mesopotamian goddess Ishtar. Oh no, Ishtar with Dustin Hoffman. Why do I know about this movie?
You know about every movie, unfortunately. It's a curse and a blessing.
I actually like that movie, Ishtar. It's a terrible movie, but it's amazing. So I know how to say that one right. Ishtar had a boyfriend named Thamos who died, and she went to the underworld to save. The reason why this matters is because Thamos managed to get his own little cult in ancient Greece. The reason why this matters is because Pan is also means all like the prefix. So this could have been a mistranslation, and someone could have overheard the cult of Thamos say, Thamos, the all great, is dead, praising his one and only achievement. I find this absolutely fascinating. Keep staying mortal.
Wow, you know more about mythology than I do, for sure.
The great thing about like ancient history mythology like this is like there's cool things like this that happen. Like if you want like a really good podcast, listen to The Dollop, because I always find like interesting little stories that they tell about history. Like, do you know about the hat riots? B.
Hat riots?
So pretty much there was like back in the day, I think it was in England, people were putting like feathers in their hats, like macaroni.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess it became a problem of like the joke was people would take the feathers out of people's hats. It ended up turning into a whole riot that almost burnt down a city. There's also the eel riots, which is also weirder.
I love the
But that's
chaos
another
of that.
completely
That's
different
great.
story. There's a lot of riots throughout history that make no sense.
Wasn't there also a thing where like women who felt like threatened by creepy dudes would take like hat pins and like hit them with it?
Yeah, well, that's the reason why hairpins are freakishly long. But thank you so much for that lovely email, Maddie. We really appreciate it. B, what is our next email?
Next email is from, I want to say Cassie. If it's Casey, I'm sorry. I think it's Cassie. Hi, Zach and B. I'm texting to say how much I love your podcast. I listen to it all the time, and yes, yell at my phone a lot. I love the PJO and HAO series so much and can't wait for you to get to the last book in the PJO series, exclamation point, exclamation point. I just love the content, exclamation point, exclamation point. Sorry for the long letter. Keep saying mortal, exclamation point, smiley face, smiley face. People keep apologizing for their long, emails, but they're not that long.
No, you guys are fine. You don't have to apologize. Once again, once it's like a 9-hour audiobook, that's when you guys can apologize. Otherwise,
Yeah, no, it's
fine.
fine. Really, thank you for your email, Cassie. That was very nice.
So we have an email from Katie. Hey y'all, I'm Katie and I'm 23 from Long Island, New York. I've read all the Percy Jackson books multiple times and I'm currently working again on rereading The Trials of Apollo before the next one comes out. Side note, both of you knowing nothing about Long Island is hilarious and also very frustrating.
I lived on Long Island for a summer.
I have never been to Long Island. Actually, no, I take that back. I'm supposed to go to Long Island in the summer.
Right. I remember that.
So I guess I'll go to like Montauk and splash around for a bit.
Montauk's on the very end of Long
I'll
Island.
figure. I don't care enough about Long Island until I figure out distance.
Wait, what do we not know about Long Island? I've been there.
I think everyone in Long Island just knows about Camp Half Blood, and it's just the world's worst kept secret.
Do you think my ex-boss knows about Camp Half-Blood?
I'm sure he's a monster that lives right next to it.
Actually, that would make a lot of sense if he was a monster. That would track.
So I started listening to your podcast earlier this week, at the beginning of May 2019. I'm one of the people that can't listen out of order, so I started with your very first episode from The Lightning Thief from over a year ago. I'm currently working my way through chapter 13, where he plunges to his death arc. My goal is to be caught up by the end of May. I listen a lot during my hours commute, at the gym, while I clean, etc., etc., so it's not too close for a goal. To get to the point, it's a great podcast and super informative. I love all of B's opinions and hypotheses about what could happen. Some are bizarre, then again, a lot of Percy Jackson is bizarre. Zach, I'm not gonna lie, a lot of your references that you make I don't understand, however, they seem to be on point. Thank you.
That's how I feel about you also, actually, Zach. Sometimes I'm like, yep, that's my friend. He's talking about something. I wish I knew what it was.
Like, I just brought up Ishtar. I don't think anyone but like four schlubs in Wisconsin know about Ishtar.
No, yeah, I don't know if anybody in the age demographic that listen to this show know what you're talking about, but we appreciate your deep cuts because someone out there really appreciates them.
I'm sure there's some old person out there that just laughs and like he talks about like Dean Domino and he talks about that Frank Sinatra. I used to hang out with Frankie back at
Jeez.
the Hellfire Club back in Las Vegas. I don't even know what I'm talking about now. Anyway, I'm emailing you guys the above compliment because your podcast deserves them, but also to lend an ear or another POV if you'd like. You've mentioned multiple times from the first few episodes that you'd love to know what kids think about the book/plot development, or how an adult works with kids may think. I'm a teacher/social studies, and I've covered many in English class where students are actually working on reading the first book. They're sixth graders and a little dumb, but I love them.
Oh, hey, there's some sixth graders who listen, I'm pretty sure, and maybe they're not dumb. We don't know. I've never met you. I'm sure a lot of you are smarter than I am.
I don't know if you've had a chance to do this. Remember, I'm listening to the podcast posted over a year ago, but if you still wanted, I would love to help you guys out. Sorry about the length of this email. Can't wait to be caught up, Katie. You know, this is kind of a trend today of people apologizing for long emails.
Yeah, you guys, it's fine. It's fine.
Yeah, just shoot us an email. We can see if we can work something out. We don't really do any more people teaming up to do an episode because
It's pretty difficult to get someone to be caught up.
yeah, that's one of the reasons.
Yeah. So you have to already know Percy Jackson, I would imagine, to do an episode. Or like it would have to be a special episode or something like that. But that's really interesting.
So, B, did we get any other messages?
Another email. Okay, so I looked up how to pronounce your name because I didn't want to be a jerk. Unschumann, I want to say. I am Unschumann, writing this email all the way from India, and I am a very big fan. I'm in 8th grade and started reading Percy Jackson since 7th grade. I finished PJO and HOO and the first book of Trials of Apollo and Kane Chronicles. I'm a son of Apollo. Basically, I'm the biggest nerd. My questions are, who do you want to be in relationships in future books of Percy Jackson? Who do you ship together? We get this question a lot. Who is your favorite god till now, and why so? Can't wait for you guys to reach Heroes of Olympus. I'm a big fan. You guys make me laugh so hard. Love you guys. P.S. Sorry for any grammatical errors in the mail. I'm not even sure that the email is correct. You got the right email. We got your email. And it's really honestly your email was more legible than a lot of people whose English is their first language. So really, you shouldn't be too insecure about that.
You're kind of hitting home runs there.
Do you want to answer that first question?
Well, yes, I really do enjoy the Queen Anne's Revenge. That's a really perfect ship. I'm really sad that sank, as well as
we're just gonna avoid this question forever. I mean,
actually, to take it back, my favorite ship is actually the Titanic, though. Yeah, that
no,
also
it did
sunk.
sink.
Yeah, a lot of ships sink. You'd be surprised.
You'd be surprised how many ships sink. I think we're just like avoiding it for the drama, because like no one's ever gonna agree on who to ship with who, and I don't know.
So I guess to be like serious a little bit for me, I don't care about ships at all. Like that's the thing that least interests me at all in a book.
The thing is, I care about Annabeth and Percy as a dynamic between them, but whether or not they're friends or whether they end up dating, like, isn't as important to me as them just like being on good terms with each other. You know, that kind of thing.
I think when they're talking about relationships, it's about like kissy kissy huggy huggy, rather than like an actual relationship. Which I guess it's a little harder too because we're adults, so we look at relationships, you know, from the adult perspective, other than like the kid perspective.
Yeah, so I'm not just like, oh yeah, I really hope that these 12-year-olds, or actually no, now they're 15 or whatever. Like, oh, I really hope these 15-year-olds end up dating. Like, also like, who cares if these 15-year-olds end up dating? Because who stays with someone who they're dating at 15? Almost nobody.
Well, no, because one, they don't have cars. Like, that's the most awkward thing. You want to go on a date? My mom's going to take me, though, but we can go to Chuck E. Cheese.
My flying horse will come pick you up.
Oh, no. Just like imagine prom.
It's like, hey, boss, you going to the prom with Annabeth?
Hey, are there any cute mares over there? No, Blackjack.
Yeah, that's actually pretty funny. I bet that's a fanfic someone has already written.
Percy Jackson goes to prom with Annabeth.
Oh, for sure.
Oh, no, and their mom is the chaperone, Annabeth. No.
Mm-hmm. Awkward.
But to answer the other question, we've answered this a couple times before. Like, I really do enjoy Athena, even though, you know, she's very gray level character. And I've kind of come to love Ares a little bit, even though he's kind of a jerk. He's a jerk in the way of that's just who he is, but at least he's still honorable.
Yeah, I like Apollo. I think he's funny. Like the whole poet thing, the whole like him making like haikus that are like not great and everyone's annoyed by it. I don't know, I find that like a very funny running gag. I think I'm like a child of Apollo. I mean, I don't even know if I that's what I got on the quiz, but I think that's the bracelet that you got me right when you went to that Getty Images thing was kid of Apollo because it's like, I don't know, you're creative or whatever, artsy. So I relate to him in that way. He's just kind of like a non-threatening god too. He's like pretty chill and funny. Um, you know what I mean? I like him. I think most of the gods are kind of jerks. I mean, Hades is actually pretty chill for the
Well,
most
yeah,
part.
he's so chill because he lives in a place that doesn't have the sun.
We don't see him much though.
Well, it's because he doesn't live on Mount Olympus. Like he chills out in his own bachelor pad, even though he's married.
Yeah.
He's got he legitimately has a man cave.
He does. It is a cave underground. Yeah. I find Poseidon is kind of meh. I guess Athena's kind of cool. She's like she's pretty ice cold when it comes to decision making though, which I can't really relate to.
Well, she's the goddess of wisdom and war strategy. I mean, if you're dealing with war strategy, you kind of have to be cold.
Yeah, no, I know that she has to be. It's just like I find her an interesting character, but I don't necessarily like it. It's that question of like, oh, you could like a character and find them interesting, but also like you wouldn't want to necessarily hang out with them. Like I feel like hanging out with Apollo would be fun.
So we did get another email. Hi, I'm Katie and I live in Canada. I've been listening to your podcast for a while now. It has made me notice things that I missed the first time I read the series. I found out about Percy Jackson later than most fans because I didn't realize the series existed until after the first movie. I guess the first movie is a weird blessing because it made people read Percy Jackson for the first time.
Yeah, yeah. I don't think I read the first Unfortunate Events book until after the movie, actually.
I read them, but then I thought they were also Harry Potter to begin with because I got confused about Klaus on the cover.
You're just like, oh, there's a kid with glasses. I don't know. Let's find out what's happening
Hey,
here.
wait a second. This isn't Harry Potter. This is depressing.
Well, they're both depressing in their own special way.
Oh, yes. One of them is a series of unfortunate events. The other one's stars Neil Patrick Harris. um, That was when I was in my late teens. Now I'm 26 and I have read most of Rick Riordan's young adult books. I don't always get your references, but I have enjoyed your podcast so far. The only thing that's really bugged me as I've listened to your podcast was when you said one of my favorite series, The Inheritance Cycle, is basically a ripoff of Lord of the Rings. Sure, there are some similarities, but they aren't that similar that you can call it a ripoff. If you don't know The Inheritance Cycle, by the series title, the name of the main character is Aragon. In most recent episode, your podcast, you're wondering why the demigods and Percy Jackson don't use guns. I don't want to spoil anything, but you'll find out eventually. I also found it kind of funny when you talked about the idea of Percy and Annabeth being a couple. I kind of grossed you out. I don't ship them, but it's not because I don't think of them dating as weird, but it's because the fan fiction has shown me or another ship I like more. Anyways, I look forward to when you start the next book, and it's my second favorite book in the series. My first favorite is the last in the series. I'll not include the title to avoid any spoilers. Anyways, this is getting extremely long, so I'll say I like your podcast, and I'll keep listening. Now, Katie, that's a really nice message. I want to say before I say my response, because on this show we do have rebuttals, and that is I respect your opinion, especially when it comes to favorite book series, because those are very special to people. And like if someone said something about series of unfortunate events, I would always defend it to my dying breath. Though with that being said, and me trying to be respectful here, I've actually done research, and I can say without a doubt that the Inheritance Cycle is the first book, let's say that, because I actually looked through the other ones. The first book is a blatant ripoff of Lord of the Rings and Star Wars down to the T. And there's actually a really great article that I read. I'm gonna link it in the show notes.
Yeah, I don't know anything about this series, but you did send me that chart of the character names.
Pretty much like what I'm going to say here is there's actually a couple articles written about what he did. Specifically, you have to keep in mind when he wrote this book, he was a very small, like a teeny bopper, and it's actually a really interesting, and it's actually a really interesting story about how he got this book published. But as a 14-year-old, the things you think are cool usually go into your books, and there's actually some really great articles. I want to leave them down in the show notes. There's actually one from 12 years ago that I really did enjoy and was very informative and had a lot of sources. But pretty much Aragon, the first book at least, is pretty much has the plot of Star Wars. Pretty much, if I describe Star Wars to you, you pretty much describe Aragon. And there's actually a chart that I've sent this to B, but pretty much they just changed all the Lord of the Rings names just slightly, so they sound slightly different. If you like the inheritance cycle and it makes you happy, don't listen to me. I'm just a schmuck with a microphone. Because, like I said before, I want to be respectful in the way of saying, like, I personally don't think that it's that good, or maybe because I read a lot of books, but also because a lot of it is, what's the old saying? If you rip things from two things, or you rip things from one source, it's plagiarism, but if you take it from multiple sources, it's research. So, I can't really, give a thing, but what do I know? I haven't really written a book, and that book sold millions of copies around the world, and the guy is super duper rich. So, what can I say?
Hey, I haven't sold multiple copies of any book, so who am I to cast stones? Especially considering I don't know this book series, so I have nothing to contribute to this conversation.
No, but there's some really fascinating articles, and also if you really look at the structure of Aragon, it's kind of apparent. But I'll leave it at that because I really don't like being super confrontational about what people like, because it's all a matter of opinion, and also if you love something and it's your favorite thing, who am I to say it's awful and trash? I can only just spit out the facts that I know and my opinions about
Spittin'
the
facts
thing.
with Zach. That's your new podcast.
So we didn't get any iTunes reviews this week, but that's okay. We got plenty of wonderful emails from a lot of lovely, lovely listeners. B, where can they find you?
You can find me on Twitter and Instagram at bkellygorman, and you can find me on Tumblr at twinpoetry.tumblr.com.
So if you want to find me on Twitter, you can find me on Twitter at Suda41, that's SUDA41. And if you want to follow our show on Twitter, that's at halfblood_radio. If you want to email the show, you can email us at radiocamphalfblood@gmail.com. We also have a Patreon available. That's Patreon/radiocamphalfblood. We also have t-shirts available at TeePublic. Well, I think that's pretty much it. So, B, we missing anything?
Do you want to give some advice to our listeners?
Well, my advice is what I give about dating.
Oh yeah, that's pretty good advice. Also, if you meet someone who goes by three names, they could be a mortal who can see monsters, or they could be a serial killer. Sometimes both.
Actually, to add to that, B, when you see someone with three initials, make sure to really think about it in your head, because then it's gonna make so much more sense if they're crazy. Like Red. Oh my god, Rick Riordan, you mad genius! You think he did that on purpose, or was that just a coincidence?
No, I think he did it on purpose, for sure. That has to be intentional. Her hair is red. Anyway, I don't know. We could conspiracy theorize about Percy Jackson forever.
Well, we'll figure it out eventually. Well, I'm Zach.
I'm B.
And keep staying mortal. Bye!
Bye, guys.